Cha-cha.
A man on top of an ice cream truck with a flamethrower. Perfectly fine activity in New York City. Then he
stuff in the city. Have you been did they what? Huh? I just short-circuited right there, right in front of Mike Rose and everybody else. Mike Rose, of course, here with us for the week. I'm wondering, I can't remember when they reopened the Glass Cube. Was that before or after the pandemic?
Ooh, that's a good question. I knew they were renovating it. I don't get by there all that often, so I do not know.
Okay. Because I know it's reopened, but it's not 24 hours, and it's not what it was. Obviously, right. because nothing is. Which brings us to today's fun topic. What, the changes wrought in the modern world. And there's something weird about, and I haven't heard many people, I guess, see, I'm doing that thing again. The Mac had a stellar quarter last quarter. Mac sales were up 30% last quarter. 50% of the people buying both the Mac and the iPad were new to the Mac and the iPad. And it's funny because when Tim Cook was making his prepared remarks on the earnings call, he said we had an amazing quarter despite, the pandemic. And I think he could easily have said because of the pandemic. Now, their ability to deliver, their ability to produce and deliver in this time, that you can say despite. But there's no way we have a 30% growth for Mac in September of 2020 if we don't have coronavirus, if we don't have COVID-19. We don't have people rushing out to buy this stuff in the same sort of way. I'm curious if you have thoughts on how Apple's fortunes have changed in #these uncertain times.
Well, it is an important distinction that you're making. The despite, because of, and unaffected by the sort of steady state. Mm-hmm. I think what was interesting to me, first of all, was the number of devices, whether they were iPads or Macs, that needed to suddenly appear or needed to suddenly be built, shipped, and sold based on schools, based on people working from home, based on additional demand for multi-device households, and for a family that might have been perfectly fine with time sharing or tag teaming on a desktop, suddenly to have everybody, multiple kids, multiple parents, needing Zoom capable or GoToMeeting capable devices, needing Google Apps capable devices all of a sudden, that I think drove a lot of the demand. I am curious. I have not seen numbers on this, but I'm very curious what may or may not have happened with the Chromebook market, because Chromebooks have been making a huge push in educational contexts. They're sort of standard issue for a lot of schools, where if it were 5-10 years ago, it would have been iBooks and later MacBook Airs taking those spots in the rolly carts in the classrooms. So I do think that a lot of the best quarter ever for the Mac, or best year ever for the Mac, you have to put some of that freight on the doubling or tripling of the demand for home computing.
Yeah.
And also enterprises big businesses that are having to give laptops to employees who never had laptops before or needed laptops before. People who had desktop computers. Desktop computers, very difficult to pick up and send to somebody's house. So in a lot of those large enterprises, or some large enterprises, those are environments where there's platform choice for employees. So when they show up, they say, "What do you want? Do you want a Dell? Do you want a Lenovo? Do you want a Mac?" So those two factors combined, corporate buying and the second screen, third screen, fourth screen for home use, I think drove a lot of that volume. Is that sustainable, or is that something that's going to continue indefinitely? Probably not. At some point you go back to your replenishment rate or your
Yeah.
your runtime. But I think the point that keeps getting made at keynotes, and has been made for a long time, is that percentage of buyers who are new to the Mac is always surprising. Like, never ceases to be surprising to me.
Yeah.
And of course, you and I have been on the Mac for decades, plural. So it's super weird to us, but it's also like fundamentally, intrinsically weird that half the people that buy these millions of computers are new to the platform, because the platform now has a farm team, which is iOS. That is why, to me. I mean, I'm not in Apple marketing, so take everything I say with a gigantic transparent cube of salt. But the fact of the iPhone as a feeder for Mac purchases, can't underestimate that people are making different platform choices now, and they also have more platform choices. They have of course Windows, they have the Mac, they have Chrome, they have an OS. They can buy cheaper computers that do most of what they need. So why are people still buying Macs? It's because they want that continuity of experience as they go from their phone to their desktop.
I would say it's partly because of that continuity of experience. I mean, that is huge. I don't disagree with that. I think also, though, and I posited this idea, and I don't have any numbers on it, but I sort of suggested this idea on one of the live shows that I did one time. I didn't go on vacation. I'm not going to Disneyland. I mean, there are all kinds of things that I didn't do this year. And I mean, and what's weird is that we can talk about this at the same time that we're talking about over 20 million people who are unemployed. That we can talk about this when we're talking about a spike in evictions, and at the same time we're talking about a spike in new cases of coronavirus. But the people who still have money, the people who either were already working from home or who could easily make the transition to working from home, whose jobs didn't still look at it and go, well, there's probably a redundancy here. Let's go ahead and fire some people anyway. I mean, basically, I think they're the people who had disposable income are now saying, why am I going to spend $400 on a laptop? I'm going to be looking at this thing every day for who knows how long before I get to go back to the office. I might drop an extra $5 or $10 on a better machine, in a way. I don't know. It's a possibility. I mean, maybe it's the kind of thing that they always, sort of looked at, but said, but why would I? And now that it is the primary machine, it's not just the thing that you check email on when you get home. Maybe there are reasons that people go up a bit more. I want to shift off, if we could, from the hardware and talk about the way we found out about all the hardware. So earlier this year, there was a question of, WWDC, what are they going to do? And they went virtual. And while certainly people did miss the parties, while they certainly did miss the bumping into people in the hallway, they were able to serve a lot more people with a lot more information this year. Then September, October, November, we get, what was it? It was Time Flies, it was High Speed, and it was One More Thing. The question I was asking people last week, and I'm curious what your thought is this the way now going forward? Not to be all Mandalorian, but, this is the way? Or is it a thing where a few years from now we're making everybody come back to Cupertino and cutting some people out again?
Oh man, this is for me personally, and this is the toughest question. I have a connection to the events industry, and I love I've been to many Apple keynotes and Apple events over the years, and I love the experience of it, and I love the energy of it, and I still think that probably this is the way for this kind of thing, that the in-person product keynote has probably gone forever, which really makes me sad. It's really it is a fundamentally different experience to be in that room when, for example, Phil Schiller pulls the MacBook Air out of the manila envelope, the inner office envelope. Mm-hmm. It's a fundamentally different experience to be there when at the end of it, Tony Bennett comes out to sing "I Left My Heart in San Francisco," or Erykah Badu, or whoever. I mean, that, and I mean, the problem with it is so much of that is tied to the pre-streaming experience, where those of us who were covering these were live blogging them, we're typing frantically, and trying to get, the real-time information out to people who now can just watch it, and for many years have been able to just watch it.
Yeah.
But the experience and the reaction, I mean, WWDC, when someone comes up on stage, Craig Federighi or whoever, and says something that catches everybody's attention, Grand Central and GPUs or whatever, and everybody in the room goes and starts cheering.
Mm-hmm.
You can't bottle that. You can't stamp that out in a press and ship it out in an envelope. So I want there to be something that we get back to that is the in-person experience. I really, really do. I just don't know how, when, or what the justification will be for doing that. And it makes me really, really sad. Because if I'm one of the people making this decision, there's just the risk assessment, just trying to figure out when am I even comfortable sending my engineers, like the people that build my products, back into an environment like this. It's going to be a while. And what is the downside risk? It's enormous. So, yeah, I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I fear that we've seen the last of it.
I could see, assuming that we get this licked, which is a horrible phrase. So sorry. Assuming that we get this taken care of, I could see a victory event. Honestly.
Yeah.
And you introduce something incredible at that event. My hope is that this is what we get from now on for the most part, that maybe once a year, or maybe, there is a time, because, as August Trometer pointed out here last week, or maybe as Adam Christensen pointed out here last week, they built a theater. They built a beautiful theater. They built a theater they want to use, but they built the theater in the before times. So, I mean, just wanting to use that, I mean, again, not to harp on it, I want to use Disneyland, and I can't right now.
Right.
I want to use the coffee shop down the street the way I used to, which was to go and avoid people, and I can't right now. So I could see them doing like a gigantic, we're all fine now, and here's the Apple car, or we're all fine now, and here's the the VR thing that people have thought we were going to make for years. I can't really see them going back to, hey, here's another iPhone at this point, for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, because of the risk, and two, because they can say so much stuff so much more quickly in such a succinct way, and there's never I mispronounced somebody's name, I stumbled over something, that didn't work, because they can fix it in post. I mean, there are just so many reasons to love what they're doing, and, I got to be outside of Apple Park one time. I was there for maybe 25 minutes. And that's all I'm ever going to see of Apple Park. Except now I get to see Apple Park for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, when they do these things. And I don't know. I'm like you. I want everything to go back to the way it was. But there was also sort of an exclusion thing that happened with that I don't think most people, notice. I've tried to get on Apple's a list for a while of, could I please get an invitation to anything? And I talked to Tone. So I mean, I feel as included as everyone else, which is also kind of an interesting thing. The guy watching from Forbes, or the guy watching from Apple Insider, is watching the same thing as the guy from Sheboygan. I mean, there's a we all get that moment. Now, granted, Apple's still reaching out to press on some other stuff, and certainly there are people that review units and things like that, but we're all in the same place at those events is kind of for me personally, appealing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point about who's on the inside and who's on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
That those of us who are in the fuzzy middle, maybe,
yeah,
might have felt weird about. Yeah, I mean, I had the sort of odd experience of being, over the years, of having been an Apple keynoter as a journalist, as a blogger, as a member of the general public, and as a VIP customer at one point, which was hilarious. So I sort of had all three sets of experiences, and guaranteed what you're talking about for the vast majority of consumers of that experience, consumers of that information, this is way better. Like it's just so much better. It definitely is creating a higher baseline, and still folks who had that visceral in-person experience are not getting the same thing that they got. I was sitting in the VIP customer area at the Macworld Expo keynote where they announced the Microsoft investment and that Microsoft Office would continue being published for the Mac. The Bill Gates Saves the Mac keynote.
Yeah.
That was a super weird experience, like being in the room where people are booing the giant face of Bill Gates as it shows up on the screen. That's not replicable. Like no one else is ever going to have that experience again. And you can't, like, when someone sees something appalling and everybody starts tweeting about it, that's not the same thing. But you're absolutely right that this is bringing more people inside the tent. There is a much larger slice of the market now with the design and the specifications and the design philosophy of the M1 system on a chip. Like lots of people, many people watch that and now can talk with confidence about, well, there's 7 GPU cores, but there's 8 CPU cores, but 4 of them are high performance and 4 of them are like gonna just deal with background tasks. Like, oh my God. You're creating the sophisticated consumer you want to see show up at the Apple Store by doing this and by doing it at this kind of scale. And it's no one is going to tune in for the same. No one is going to tune in if it's not that slickly produced cosmic zoom into headquarters the way it is now, which is again going to miss it. But I think your point from last week's show, as I'm rambling on about the fact that this theater has been built, the investment has been made, there's the desire to get that value out of it and give people that experience. So I do think it's possible we get back to it. I just don't know how. And I do think that this, on balance, this is better for more people than the smaller number of people that got to experience it in person.